Hello and welcome to CyNam 21.2. Over the next couple of hours, we'll be exploring smart cities and IoT with industry experts from IBM, CGI, Field Effects, and the National Cybersecurity Centre, and leading academics from Oxford, Royal Holloway, and Bristol universities. My name's Bruce Gregory. I'm one of the CyNam directors. I'm also the managing director of Hub 8, the co-working and innovation space in Cheltenham, where we're broadcasting from live this evening. Now I'd like to introduce my fellow CyNam director and newly appointed chair of CyNam, Madeline Howard. Over to you, Mads.
Bruce, and hello everybody. Welcome to CyNam. To those of you that are new, thank you so much for joining us, and to our usual CyNam goers, it is great to have you with us again. I know we've got a local, national and international audience with us this evening, so please do get involved on our socials and on our Slack channels throughout the event. Always love to hear your thoughts and comments and engage with speakers. We've got a jam-packed agenda as always, with talks from industry, academia and government, as well as our fabulous student showcase, all of which you can check out on the event portal. As always, we've also got really exciting breakout sessions halfway through the event, which you can get involved with and join in discussions. There's 5 to pick from, so it's going to be a tough choice as to which one you join, but please do get involved with them because there's some fantastic options for you to pick from. Before we kick off, I do, of course, have some thank yous. CyNam is a community interest company that is dedicated to enhancing and enabling growth, and we would not be able to put on our events or any of our initiatives without the support of our incredible sponsors. So a huge thank you to CGI, who are our gold sponsor for the event, to Field Effects and IBM, who are our silver sponsors and will both be running breakout sessions, to our yearly sponsors, CGI, Hazelwood, Gloucestershire, BPE and Wembley Partners. You guys provide amazing support throughout the year and we are so grateful. To our technical partners, a huge thanks to CSA, particularly Dave and Jamie, who supported us with this event. And finally, to Squashed Robot, who have literally done the most amazing job at kitting out Hub 8 and transforming it into the awesome studio that you see this evening. I've finally got some personal thanks because this event really would not have been possible without 3 really special individuals. The first of which is Claire Bourne, who only recently joined CyNam full-time and has literally had the most crazy month bringing this event together, and she has done a remarkable job. She's been inspiring, engaging, and she's really pulled this together. So Claire, you are a total superstar. The second is to Eleanor Hartman, who has supported Claire, and I'm delighted to say that because Eleanor's been such an asset, she will be joining the CyNam team on an official permanent basis, splitting her time between CyNam and Hub 8 in her new role as ecosystem engagement and events lead. So Eleanor, a huge congratulations to you. I'd also like to say a huge thanks to Ollie Mott from Webworking, who was an utter dream in supporting us in getting the events portal up and running. So do check it out. There's lots of really great stuff on there. And Ollie, honestly, you were fabulous, honestly, fabulous. So that's all of the thank yous done. I think you can tell that we have an amazing group of people and companies that support us, and we really are grateful for everything that you do and everything that you really do enable us to do. So let's get on with the show. I'm absolutely delighted to say that CyNam 21.2 is in partnership with the prestigious Cheltenham Science Festival, and here to say a few words is Ian George, Director of the Festivals. Ian, over to you.
And I'm delighted to welcome Ian George, Director of Cheltenham Festivals, who's joining us here this evening. Ian, thanks so much for coming along, and it'd be great to hear of what you're up to with Cheltenham Festivals.
Thanks, Bruce. Firstly, delighted to be part of CyNam tonight, and what happens to also be the first day of Cheltenham Science Festival, so we're really delighted about the partnership. We've got 4 days and over 60 events, which will be hybrid. Obviously a very different looking festival to normal years, but we're still delighted with the lineup. We've got lots of people helping us about discovering this world we live in this year. So we've got Brian Cox talking to us about black holes. Wow. We've got Hannah Fry talking about AI. We've got Nobel Prize winner Paul Nurse talking about the cell biologist, telling us a little bit about what is life, his latest book. And also one of our young guest curators, Gina Martin, who's a young activist, encouraging us to find the activists within all of us. So we're really looking forward to all of those within the adult programme. And at the festivals, and particularly the Science Festival, of course, we're really passionate about STEM. So we've got a whole series of digital events, workshops and activities, and we're looking to interact with over 50,000 school children over the course of the festival. So we're really, really pleased with that. And we talk a lot about the festivals around connecting communities and sparking curiosity. So I think it's particularly poignant that we're with CyNam tonight. So thanks for having us.
Oh, Ian, it's a pleasure to have you here. And well, for anyone who hasn't looked into the Science Festival, please do so. Some great events coming up. So please log on and see what's going on there. Now, before we move on, some great news. I'm delighted to announce that Hub 8 will be launching a brand new innovation centre in partnership with Gloucestershire College, opening this September. It's going to be located right next to GCHQ here in Cheltenham and provide over 10,000 square feet of some of the best innovation and workspace in the region. For more information, please visit the Hub 8 website, look at our socials. I'm also going to be announcing some really exciting new initiatives from Hub 8 and CyNam later in the show. But for now, I'm delighted to hand over to Reid. Over to you, Reid.
Thank you very much, Bruce. It's great to be back. What an event we've got tonight. It's also really nice having the hybrid format and being here in Hub 8 and being online with you at home. And the theme for tonight on smart cities is something that's really close to my heart. I know as we build the Golden Valley development, we're going to learn a lot from what we hear tonight. So what a great topic. And to kick us off, we've got Professor Lizzie Coles-Kemp. She's going to be speaking to us on what does a welcoming and trusting smart city look like. So Lizzie is a Professor of Information Security at Royal Holloway, University London. She worked for 18 years as an information security practitioner, previously to taking up a full-time academic post at Royal Holloway. She's an EPSRC Research Fellow with a research program in everyday security and digital service design. And Lizzie uses creative engagement methods to explore everyday practices of information production, protection, circulation, curation, and consumption within and between communities. So really, really the right person to be kicking off today. So Lizzie, welcome to CyNam. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be here. So really looking forward to talking today, to opening this session, because I think what makes a connected place secure, safe, but also welcoming, and somewhere that we can all live and create and contribute is really key, I think, to what we're doing here. So I've brought with me a picture. The picture was painted by artist Alice Angus. Alice and I have worked together for many years. And what she does is she helps bring to life the types of places and spaces that I work as a community researcher. And a couple of years ago, Alice and I worked on this particular scene because what we wanted to capture was what a smart environment looked like, felt like, even sounded like for people in their everyday lives. So Alice and I really went backwards and forwards on this picture, working all the different aspects of technology, the smart technologies, the digital technologies, the technologies that came from the local authorities, the technologies that came from the corporate sector, the technologies that actually people made themselves, and brought that into this picture that you see before us. So what I'd really like to do tonight is just to walk you through that scene. I think typically to the sort of audience that we have here, if we think about what makes that environment from a technological perspective safe and secure, what are we going to think? Well, we're going to think it's reliable technology, robust technology. We're going to hear a lot about that tonight. Technology that can't necessarily be hacked or has less likelihood of being hacked. Technology that's compliant with legislation, with regulation. So all of those things are really super important. And right the way across the UK, we work really hard to ensure that we have students, that we have technologists, that we have specialists that can work on that. But I think we need to ask ourselves an important question. Who or what is doing the securing in that picture? Is secure technology alone enough for a secure, smart environment? And I think we should maybe have a walk through that picture just to see what's going on. I'd like to draw your attention to the council office at the back. So when I started working in communities and security 14 years ago, I spent a lot of time in council offices, and that was super, super interesting, because what you could see happening there is that you could see that, yeah, the security of the environment, the way that information was exchanged and stored, that was really important. But there were three other things that were super important. That when you watched citizens, individuals come in and talk in the council office, it was about trust, building trust between the individual and the council worker. It was about integrity, ensuring that that data was being held, and it was being held for a reason that was understood, and that we knew what that data was being used for. And it was also about responsibility, knowing where responsibilities lie, both for the individual and for the council worker. And that was absolutely crucial to a secure environment. If we pivot round and we look at the library, it's a similar thing here. Libraries, yes, they're about books, they're about knowledge, they're about places to learn, but they're also about places where you can get help for services, get help for the things that you need in order to live in that environment. And over again, I see librarians really take the responsibility of caring for the people in the community to really help them do what they need to do. Have the integrity to ensure that where they were really working with people and really supporting them in a really up-close way, that that was done with integrity and a really strong understanding that trust was important here. We go to the healthcare environment, we go to the community centre that sits behind it in that picture, and it's the same story. Now, what's really interesting is over the last decade, those environments have become increasingly digitalised. And now they've moved to actually being something that's smart, something that actually has intelligent automation. Now in the council setting, quite a lot of what happens isn't just about individuals, but also about end-to-end automation, about decision-making, about smart services. And as we think about bringing that type of technology into the environment that you see before you, what makes that environment secure is not just the security of the technology, but ensuring that we have the responsibility understood, that we have the trust, and we have the integrity, that we find new ways to build that. That also when we put that type of technology into that environment, we very carefully think about the ecosystems that it's changing, the social ecosystems that are there. And I think that this is actually super important when we look at this environment, that we think about how the responsibility stack works, how trust works, and how integrity works. Let's pan forward in this picture. You can see that we have a number of other things going on. We've got the drone at the top delivering a post. You see underneath, we still have somebody that works for the Postal Service. And behind in that picture, we've got Google Street Map. We're bringing, technology enables us to bring different partners into our civic lives, enables them to start to offer services, diversify services with a whole range of different service providers, perhaps different service providers to the ones that we've been traditionally used to. And you see at the front, you see that sandwich board, and you see the free Wi-Fi being offered as part of the cafe arrangement. And Alice drew that to really highlight that we need to think about the exchange. We need to think about how responsibility, trust, and integrity works with the commercial service providers, as well as working with the more typical statutory civic providers. But it's not just about institutions and organizations. What we can also see going up to the top of that office is we can see an office where people are using technology to mediate their relationships. So it isn't just about the trust, the integrity, and the responsibility with the institutions, it's also between us. It's the care that we show for each other that we can build into that environment. So that civic scene tells us a lot. It tells us a lot about what a friendly, smart, connected place looks like. And it also tells us that in order to have the kind of security and safety that you can see in front of you, it also shows you that we really need to think about how we map responsibility, how what we do is we think about how trust is going to be built. We're perhaps no longer talking directly face to face. And what integrity means, and how we can ensure that the data, the technology is handled with integrity, not just for a few individuals that have access, but for everybody in that scene. So I come back to that question, who or what is doing the securing? The technology is absolutely a part of that answer, but so too is the way that we engage with each other, So too is the way that we think about responsibilities and where the buck stops. So too is actually how we build, maintain, ensure, and develop and nurture trust in that environment. And it's also how we think about what the goals and objectives are for working with that data. So if I had a closing message, I would say that we have to treat our smart environments as ecosystems, as human socio-technical ecosystems. Ones that not only have technology woven through it, but also have really key human values woven into it. And we need to make sure that we find a way to model and articulate and share that as we develop these smart initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. That was a lovely session, really bringing out the need for humans, the social, as well as the technical. Brilliant, really great to start that. We're going to be moving on in a bit to a panel discussion to unpack some of that. But before then, we've got a little video to show you of the networking sessions that are coming up that we want you to be signing up for later. So let's have a look at that now.
As part of the CyNam series of events, CGI will be bringing you a head-to-head discussion on the future of smart cities.
We're going to be exploring with a really exciting group of panelists how SMEs can work more effectively or be helped to work more effectively with large corporates and government.
All thanks to the brilliant CyNam, smarter cities are coming to a town near you. Here at IBM, we're thrilled to be supporting this engaging event. Please do join and participate in our breakout session, where we'll be discussing with you practical examples of cyber resilience work in real smart cities and the recently released NCSC principles for connected places.
Hello, we are the ladies of Cheltenham Hacking Society and we're going to be at the Cheltenham Science Festival edition of CyNam.
My name's Sophia and I'll also be talking on the main stage about the future of cars and how to hack them.
And we're going to be talking about the different pathways and how to break into cybersecurity.
We hope to see you at our breakout session. See you there.
Welcome to CyNam 21.2. With an estimated 45% of cyber attacks aimed at small and medium businesses, how can they effectively monitor and protect staff, their cloud services, network, endpoint and IoT devices? Find out more in the Field Effect breakout session, Mitigating Risk in the Smart Office, with Rob Brewer.
Find out more about the Worcestershire 5G testbed in 5G So What, one of our breakout sessions coming up this evening.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope those networking sessions look interesting for you. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our 4 panelists for this session on smart cities. We've got some great people lined up. Firstly, we've got Marina Jarotka, Professor of Human-Centered Computing in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Oxford and Governing Body Fellow of St Cross College. She leads an interdisciplinary research group investigating the responsible development of technologies that are more responsive to societal acceptability and desirability. She's an EPSRC established career fellow. She's conducting a 5-year investigation into developing responsible robotics for the digital economy. And she's director of the newly established Responsible Technology Institute at Oxford and co-director of the Observatory for Responsible Research and Innovation in ICT, Orbit. And that's great to have you, Marina. We'll come to you in a moment. Welcome. Also, we have Andrew Loshman. Andrew is the co-founder and chief operating officer of Field Effect. Andrew brings a 20-year background building and managing IT security products and programs, including 13 years in government and defence, as well as security policy development within the Government of Canada's Privy Council Office and contributing to national security. Welcome, Andrew. Awais Rashid is Professor of Cybersecurity at the University of Bristol. He heads up the cybersecurity group at Bristol and is director of the EPSRC Centre for Doctoral Training in Trust, Identity, Privacy and Security in Large-Scale Infrastructures and director of Refrain, the National Research Centre on Privacy, Harm Reduction and Adversarial Influence Online. Bit of a theme emerging there. Welcome, Awais. And last but not least, we've got Andy Stanford-Clark. He's the Chief Technology Officer for IBM in the UK and Ireland. And Andy is an IBM Distinguished Engineer, a master inventor with more than 40 patents, and IBM's quantum computing leader for the UK. Andy's based at IBM's Hursley Park laboratories near Winchester and has been working in the area that we now call the Internet of Things for more than 20 years. So welcome, panelists. If I could start first with you, Marina. Why is it important, if we're designing and building a smart city, that it's citizen-centered?
Thank you, Reid. Okay, I think it's because citizens and citizen groups, they're going to have ideas. They're going to have great ideas about how technology could work for them, and particularly for their communities. And more so, they have the crucial local knowledge that's going to enable the creation of tailored solutions of that technology. They have the right to participate and the right to have a say in what happens to their cities. If you don't involve users and stakeholders in that design, then all the decision making is on the part of the designers and innovators who are creating the tech, or those who might procure it. And the priorities that they have might be very different to those of their communities. The worst scenario is that people feel as though tech is being done to them rather than something that they have a say in, and then they might not accept changes very easily.
Thanks, Marina. Andy, from an industry perspective, what would you say to that question?
Sorry, we have to repeat the question again. It was so long ago.
So why is it important, if we're designing and building a smart city, that it has the citizen at the center?
Yeah, of course. Well, ultimately, the citizens are going to have to live there. So we can design all the tech and get all the engineers to go, oh, it'd be really cool to have one of those. And, oh, we should do this, we should do that. And this bit will help sustainability, and this will help reduce the carbon footprint, and this will make it easier to access for all the lorries, and we'll float stuff down the river. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to live there, and it's not a pleasant experience, then they're not just mice being put into boxes. They're people living in houses and going to work and accessing shops and restaurants. So it's got to be a pleasant environment for them. So it really does have to be a proper design thinking, proper user-centric design.
No, thanks for that, Andy. I mean, I suppose when you think about it, it's sort of obvious, isn't it? But actually, maybe that's not always the case. Awais, if I could move on to you, what mechanisms can we use to design, build, and operate smart cities to make sure that they're citizen-centered?
So I think Marina already touched on this a little bit, and I think the term co-design is often thrown about quite easily, but I think it's much harder to actually really take citizens' perspectives into consideration when you're designing systems. And I think we should also think about that there is not a singular citizen. There are a range of communities, people from a range of socioeconomic backgrounds, and they have different needs. So I think when we talk about co-designing, we really have to ensure that all these citizen stakeholders have a clear voice, and they are actively engaged, not just at the first stage, asking them what your requirements are, but really asking what will work for them, where they will come up against challenges, and how to surmount those challenges in the first instance. Because unless we do that, what we end up in a landscape where citizens, they almost kind of butt heads with technology rather than actually utilizing its benefits, but it can also pose really huge challenges with regards to inclusion of particular socioeconomic groups. It can also lead to all sorts of senses of sort of exploitation, for example, in the large-scale data that is often collected in these kind of environments. So I think it's really, if we want to really do co-design, we really have to think about how do we engage through a range of engagement mechanisms, these different citizen stakeholders, but at the various stages throughout. And finally, the cities are long-living infrastructures. So it's not just a one-shot thing. You have to make sure that there is constant feedback and listening to the people who actually live there as to how to improve what we have built in the first instance.
I mean, that feedback sounds really, really important. Andrew, if I could come to you again, from an industry perspective and maybe a security perspective, what would you say to the sort of design, building, and operating a smart city? What does that mean for you?
Sure. I look at things through a security lens, and for me, when you look at smart cities and some of the infrastructure that is required to be able to develop it, trust and confidence by citizens in that infrastructure and the data therein is absolutely essential. So if you take a look at 5G mobile, just as a, for instance, which will be a critical enabler for smart city design, understanding how those systems are architected and implemented, and how data flows through them as a forethought and not an afterthought is absolutely essential to getting the trust and confidence in citizen access and connectivity right. One of the key ways to get this is through a process called security assurance, which is the act of understanding large systems, looking at source code, looking at how they're deployed, and to be able to articulate when and why a particular technology is safe to use for the purpose that it's been deployed. So trust and confidence and enabling that in a structured way would be absolutely essential.
No, that sounds great, Andrew. So having security professionals, secure by design, brilliant. Andy, if I could come to you, who else should be involved in building a smart city, and who gets to decide, who's involved in that?
Well, it's a really good question, because there's a temptation to let a building company come in and say, okay, we're going to build some houses, and oh, by the way, we'll use the latest building regulations, which have got to be absolutely up to date, and but therefore we're putting solar panels on the roof and we put little USB sockets in the plug outlets, and that's as good as it gets. But in fact, there's so much more to it than that, obviously, for a smart city. And so I'm working with Forley Waterside down here in Hampshire, and we've got a core technology group that's many years before we put the first spade in the ground. We've got people from the comm side, people from the IT side, people from academia, people from a range of industries who basically bring expertise to say, before you do anything, start with the internet layer underneath the ground and build it up from there. And then there's all the logistics and services and low carbon transport and how we're going to bring food onto the site. All this has got to be considered ahead of time. And then finally, people who are good at building houses will build according to what's been specified. So you just need that massive range, and it includes banking and insurance and just all sorts of industries have to be involved up front, because that's not the core competence of people who build houses.
So when we're building Golden Valley in Cheltenham, we really ought to be broadening things out. Yes, Marina, what do you say?
Well, I mean, I agree with Andy, but in addition to the technical kind of infrastructure, I think if you take a responsible innovation approach, which is essentially democratic, you've got to involve lots of different types of stakeholders, lots of different types of groups of people, and those that are going to be affected by the technology. So we might think about, you talk to the young, to the children, to elders, to ethnic minorities, to the vulnerable, to travelers, to mothers and baby groups, and cyclists and pedestrians and the homeless, and people who care about local wildlife, which often get missed out. Everyone that we can possibly think of we can engage with their views on what a smart city might mean for them and how that might impact them. And a further point, just to relate to something I've said, is really to ensure a kind of responsible development and deployment of technology, so that technology, whatever we're putting in place as a part of that infrastructure of a smart city, is actually responsibly deployed in cities and then evaluated by the people who's going to be impacted by that and whose lives and day-to-day routines will be transformed. Because if we do that in an iterative way and incrementally, then we manage their expectations, we carry them with us, and we learn so much about that kind of local context as well.
And that sounds really helpful. Awais, if I could come to you and maybe move the conversation on to a bit about privacy. Why does privacy matter in such large-scale settings? And what would you say a citizen-centered notion of privacy would look like?
So I think we don't have to go far. We can look at the range of news that we have seen in recent years, from large-scale collection of data by big organizations and the risks that come from having that large-scale collection of data. Now, if we think about it, a smart city is on even a more massive scale. A wide range of services collecting data about users to make real-time decisions, but users becoming catalysts of composition of those services, where a user walking through a smart city with wearables actually creates a composition of services. Now, there is this really fundamental question, and this goes back to the point that Marina was making about responsible innovation. Should privacy be an afterthought? Absolutely not. I think the key is that we have to ask the question, what kind of future society and smart cities do we want to live in? And do we want to think about after the fact, oh, now we have collected all sorts of data, how do we actually make it more private? Or do we start by building more privacy preserving mechanisms into the core infrastructure? Going back to Andy's point, it's not only about cables and stuff. How do we decide what is the privacy we are building into the core infrastructure so that anybody who's then building services and everything on top of it can actually utilize that core privacy primitives rather than saying, now I'm going to collect all the data and think about some access control on it. Surely that's not good enough. So I think we have to ask the question, what is it that we can do with users' data to get value out of their data in a privacy preserving way without massive privacy violations of citizens? And what does the citizen-centered notion look like? I think the citizen-centered notion looks like that people should have agency over deciding what they want their data to be used for and what not, and it shouldn't be complicated. We've all gone to a website and found the enormous kind of complex cookie thing. That is one website, okay? Imagine living in a smart city and having to do something the equivalent of that. It will totally disempower users. So I think the key word here is agency. If I can understand what happens to my data and do something with it, that's what matters, and that's not simple to do.
So agency for privacy, brilliant. Andy, any thoughts from your perspective on privacy?
So, I mean, it's all about informed consent. I mean, what you were just saying there, if I understand what people are doing with my data, most people don't understand what high-tech companies do with their data these days. And often it's hidden in the terms and conditions that you sign away to say, in order to have this service, I'll let you have all my data and do what you want with it. That's no longer acceptable. So it has to be informed consent, because if you're running a smart city on data in the same way as in Industry 4.0, you're running your business on data. That is the lifeblood, the core essence of the city. And without that data, if people withhold their consent, then all sorts of things can't happen. So people, as Marina said, you've got to bring people with you, and that's a journey. You can't just put a massive tech spec in front of them and go, this is what we're going to do, because 99.9% of the population will have no idea what that means, even if they nod their head and go, yep, that's fine.
So we're thinking about confidentiality, I guess, of data, but let's move on to availability and thinking about resilience. So I'll stay with you, Andy, and then we'll maybe go to Andrew afterwards. What about resilience in a smart city, Andy?
This is an interesting problem, because not only have you got the day one system, which is all shiny and new and it works great, and the first people move in and they start using stuff. So first of all, there's the bit you don't anticipate, which is what people will do with your system, all nice and shiny and working perfectly as long as nobody touches it once they start using it. But then you've got the long-term life cycle, as Away said at the beginning. This could be a 40, 50, 100-year program. And you've got to not only keep the systems running, but also move with the time. So as new technologies come along, you've got to take those into account, bring them into the system. So there's the whole sort of DevOps pipeline for a city is immensely complicated and many dimensional. It's not just the same as deploying code to a server. You're bringing in people's lives and people's livelihoods and people's communities and their social lives are all part of this fabric. So it's a very, very complex sort of organic computer that you're dealing with here.
Andrew, any thoughts on resilience and availability in a smart city?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at resilience as the ability of something, an organization or technology to return to form after being compressed in some undesirable way, I think that we have a pretty well demonstrated history of in technology and in business of not being resilient to cyber threats and cyber attacks at a level that would be commensurate with having an effective smart city and a trusted smart city. And so I think we need to think long and hard about what autonomous responses look like and distributed technology, the different modes and modals in which these new technologies are going to be deployed, and sensors and their interconnects, I think is really quite complex. If you look only at recent events, whether it's the Continental Pipeline in the United States and critical infrastructure there, or related technologies such as IoT and the Mirai botnet, I think it's all too easy to understand that there are significant impacts that are possible. And if we're going to measure how well we are in terms of resilience today, how well we're doing, I would say that we would need to be extremely thoughtful here.
No, that's really, really helpful. We're run out of time, actually, folks. I really wanted to start talking about climate change, climate emergency, and smart cities, but we might have to leave that for another session. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Kate Elder from CGI. Kate is, she helps clients understand and unlock strategic and operational challenges as part of the CGI UK Emerging Technology Practice. Kate also works closely with emerging technology ecosystem partners, and CGI's partner network aligned to particular focus areas, and they really do a lot of work on innovative products and capabilities, so really relevant for us tonight. So Kate, what makes a smart city smart?
So my name's Kate Elder. I work for CGI. We're a global IT and business consultancy. I'm privileged to be a gold sponsor of this event, and it's great to be here tonight. So I'm going to be talking about what makes a smart city smart. We'll be looking at some trends that we're seeing in our conversations with local authorities. We'll be looking at a vision for a smart city and a connected community, and I'll talk you through that, and then I'll bring it to life with some examples of regions around the world, initiatives there taking part in to become smarter. But first of all, it's always interesting to start a presentation asking people to get their phones out. So I'd ask you all, we're going to just do an interactive poll. I'm interested in your views on what makes a smart city smart. So if I can ask you all to grab your phone and scan the QR code on the right-hand side of this slide, or if you prefer, you can use a browser and visit slido.com, and the event code that you need is #CGI Smart Cities. What we're going to do, I'll put the next slide up in a moment. We're going to build a word cloud dynamically with your views on what makes a smart city smart. So let me change the slide there. So if you need the QR code again, it's on the bottom left of this screen, or it's slido.com, #CGI Smart Cities. And the question then is, what makes a smart city smart? Perhaps if you could input a word or two on your considerations, what you think makes a smart city smart. It could be technology, it could be a consideration or an enabler. Perhaps you're worried about cybersecurity. Just a word or two about your views on what makes a smart city smart. So I'll just give it a moment or two. Hopefully the QR code is out. We're starting to see some responses now. So this word cloud is going to build dynamically, and you can see the biggest words are the ones with the most votes. So we've got data, technology, connected. Interestingly, in our conversations with local authorities, connected communities comes out more from a rural point of view. And as part of our breakout, we're going to be talking about net zero and the power of harnessing communities to help achieve that. So we've got sustainability, I can see moving around on there. Engaged citizens, again, as part of the breakout, we're going to be talking about inclusivity. And I've got an example for bridging the digital divide as one of our examples. Lots of data, resilience, autonomy, security, obviously absolutely at the heart of what we're doing. I'll just give it another 30 seconds in the interest of time just to get the last responses in. So we've got connected technology, I can see connectivity there. So these are all themes that are coming out and will come out, I'll bring out as part of our vision for a smart city and a connected community. Good tech governance, it's good to see the CyNam audience bringing that. Okay, so I'll move on. So thanks everyone very much for taking part. I'll ask you to put your phones away now, but if you're part of CGI's breakout session after this speech, we'll do a bit more interactive polling with you. So don't put your phones away, but don't put them away too far. So first off then, I just wanted to talk about some trends that we're seeing as part of our conversations with local authorities and CGI scene globally. And really, to be sustainable, citizen communities need to achieve a long-term balance between the three dimensions on this slide. But so from a social point of view, clearly we've got population changes, increases, decreases, depending on which article you read in COVID. We've got an ageing population, which has a health challenge. People want to live independently for longer and be cared for in their own homes. And citizen participation and expectations of regions and the local authorities that they are part of are definitely changing. We're all us consumers, we're all using the likes of Amazon and other organisations, and our expectations of the services that we're receiving are definitely changing. So from an economic point of view, clearly regions, local authorities have budget pressures. There's an absolute drive to economic prosperity and job creation and employment. And again, in a post-COVID world, it's only increasing the pressure on economic prosperity and creating jobs and employment in a region. And then from an environmental point of view, we've got resource scarcity. So as the population and demographic changes, demand for energy are changing, and energy resilience. And net zero is always an interesting challenge for local authorities who see it from a few perspectives. One is from their own organisation, how they can achieve the net zero or achieve their net zero ambitions, but also as a region, encouraging the whole ecosystem within a smart city and a connected community to become net zero. And they're also feeling the impacts of climate change as well, so they're having to deal with those challenges too. So I'll bring us on then. This is our vision for a smart city and connected community. We built it just over a year ago, actually, with one of our local authority clients in the UK. Just so you can navigate your way around this, the clouds along the back, we've got typical stakeholders. So we've got council employees, local businesses, citizens, clearly, hugely important in a smart city and a connected community. We've got academia, which also includes organisations like CyNam that local authorities are working closely with as part of their region, and elected members. The political dimension is always important. We've got some of the technology that you all inputted into the word cloud along the back of the diagram, and this all helps build the picture for a smart city and a connected community. We've got operational technology on the left-hand side, things like drones, artificial intelligence and machine learning and sensors, closely linked Internet of Things at the top of the diagram there. And then we've got connectivity, again, that was brought out in the input on the word cloud, and harnessing the power of geospatial and satellites and the imagery and insight that can derive for local authorities. And then underpinned by big data, advanced analytics, and clearly cybersecurity is hugely important with all the data sources that are coming into a local authority as they become smarter, and making sure that that's protected. So the red boxes along the bottom of the diagram here are typical areas within a council that they look at, typical directorate areas. So we've got communities and families that looks at things like learning and digital skills for a region. Place, which is what's called public realm, again, energy and environment is on there, dealing with the impacts of net zero. We've got waste services. Waste services hugely important from a citizen point of view, and councils have a big challenge on their hands dealing with waste in a region. Social housing, which is about environmental monitoring, proactive maintenance, managing their housing stock, and health and social care. Again, with an ageing population, it's enabling people to live for longer in their own homes and independently. The two boxes on the top of the diagram, so we've got managed IT there, which speaks to some of CGI's core services, and then enablement on the right-hand side is about running a council in a smart and efficient way. And across the bottom, we've got typical outcomes that local authorities are looking to achieve as part of the drive towards becoming a smart city and connected community, things like being more responsible, providing opportunity for citizens. And then at the very heart, and I think this is what underpins a whole, what makes a smart city smart, it's about the convergence of the technology and the data that provides and the service lines that run along some of the red boxes here to really drive the insight that will improve operational and strategic outcomes for a council, the region, and all the stakeholders across the top of the diagram there. So with that in mind, I just wanted to bring to life for you a couple of examples, really, just how CGI is working with organisations around the world on becoming smart city and connected community. So the moving on down the road, I'll just pick two of those with one eye on the clock. The Kiruna Hidden City, moving on down the road. Kiruna is a municipality in the Nordics. There's a mine actually in Kiruna that provides 90% of Europe's iron ore, and the town was built on the mine, and they realised a few years ago that the town, there was subsidence, so the town was moving in accordance with the mine. And we are working with Microsoft with augmented reality, maps, geospatial mapping, to visualise the underground infrastructure of Kiruna, so they can quite literally move the town 3 miles up the road, and harnessing the power of connected communities to enable sustainability in the region. And then the other example, just on the bottom right, that I'll bring out for you, empowered learning and bridging the digital divide. So clearly connected communities, engaging everyone as part of the journey that local authorities are on. We're working with a number of local authorities in Scotland to provide iPads for children, and everyone raised an eyebrow a few years ago, iPads for children, clearly in a post-COVID world, and making sure that everybody has equality of access to learning. I should say teachers have the iPads too, and making sure that...
This is, sorry to interrupt, I mean, this is fantastic. We could go on all evening, but we've run out of time, and I'm sure for the breakout session, people can sort of find out more. But thank you so much for your time. No, thank you, yeah. So it's no time for our breakout sessions, so over to you.
Hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me as part of the breakout session. So welcome everyone. Our breakout session, so I'm Kate Elder, those of you that have probably just heard me on the live stream, a consultant here in CGI's emerging technology practice. This breakout session, we're going to explore over the next half an hour or so, smart cities, are they an opportunity or a challenge? I'm going to have a debate. I'm joined by my colleagues Ian Diver and Paul Earnshaw. I'm going to ask you both just to introduce yourselves. Ian, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Ian Diver. On the screen I can see a little window which says Harry Cook at the bottom, but my name's Ian. I'm a director consulting here at CGI, working on the Internet of Things and smart cities in particular.
Thanks. And Paul, if I can just ask you to go next. What's a presentation without a few technical gremlins? I'm just going to try and share my screen again.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Paul Earnshaw. I've been with CGI for 16 years. I'm a director of innovation and research, research lab into all things emerging technology.
Perfect, thank you both. So I'll move us on then. So we're going to, as part of this breakout session, we're going to have a debate. So Ian and Paul are going to put for and against arguments against each of the 3 questions that you can see on screen. So first off, we're going to tackle, are smart cities environmentally friendly? And then we're going to ask, is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it? And then finally, we're going to look at, are smart cities safer for residents? And as part of the debate, if you want to listen closely, we're going to ask you for your opinion after each question. So we're going to keep it really tight on timings. I know we're the organisers here are keeping us to everyone to schedule. So perhaps if we can take the first question then, are smart cities environmentally friendly? Ian, do you want to give us 3 minutes on the for argument, please?
Yes, certainly, Kate. Thanks. So my answer to this one is a strong yes. I believe we can use this technology, and more importantly, that data that we've heard about in earlier sessions, which that technology collects in a smart city, to become the environmentally friendly society that we like to be. Here's a couple of examples. If you live in a city, then you'll be exposed probably on a daily basis to dangerous and illegal levels of air pollution. And according to the World Health Organization, 9 out of 10 of us globally are in that position. It doesn't have to be like that. So with a ubiquitous IoT, we can have a network of low-cost sensors, one on every lamppost, if you like, which can generate the data to not only manage but to avoid that situation. So imagine this: if you suffer from asthma or a respiratory condition, then when you wake up, your phone can advise you whether it's sensible to walk to work, cycle to work, get the bus, or whether indeed you need to stay at home today. And on the prevention side, if you're driving into the city, the transport planner with a real-time map of environmental conditions on that day can actually adjust your route, can adjust the road tariff, the price that you pay to drive into the city. And maybe certain routes you won't be able to go down because neighbourhood streets could be blocked off by automatic bollards to make it safe for kids to walk to school, like I did when I was a kid. Another example, Kate mentioned net zero. I guess a lot of this does come down to personal choice, doesn't it? But let's keep in mind that 1/4 of UK CO2 emissions actually come from ourselves, from heating our homes. So at CGI, I've worked on the smart meter infrastructure that we have in the UK. If you've already got a smart meter, you'll know you can use it to spot those high consumption appliances in your home. And then the all-electric home of the future, you'll be able to run your appliances, charge your electric car using off-peak tariffs, which not only saves you money, but spreads the load on the grid to reduce the need for non-renewables to cut in for peak time generation. And it's all about the data, isn't it? So in a smart city, you'll have the data to choose based on the savings it might make you, when it's the right time to take out your gas boiler, go for a heat pump. And maybe in the future, we'll have gamified data sharing schemes. Who uses the least electricity in my street? How come the Joneses next door, same size house as me, that they use half as much as I do? What can I learn from that? And we all keep our houses too warm. We don't bother to turn down our thermostat at 8 a.m. in the morning when the sun starts to shine outside. If we're going to keep to 2 degrees as an average temperature rise, we're going to have to turn down our thermostats. Why not let your smart home to do it, or even some external agency?
Thanks, Ian. Just in the interest of time, we've got 3 questions, and I'm interested to hear Paul's argument again. I'm quite liking the idea of going into competition with my neighbour on my energy use, but perhaps Paul, you can pick up the thread and talk to us, give us the against argument.
Yeah, so I've no doubt that energy management and IoT and smart cities can help with energy management in a sort of an isolated way. But I'm kind of reminded of the introduction of catalytic converters in the 1990s. Any of you that are old enough to know that will know that before that, cars had no catalytic converter and belched out all sorts of noxious gases and all the rest of it. And everybody hailed catalytic converters as the great way of reducing environmental pollution. About 10, 15 years after they were introduced, somebody pointed out that where does all this platinum palladium come from that's used in a catalytic converter? Oh, dug out of the ground in South Africa in a really obnoxious, polluting and environmental disaster of a mine. And you go, well, yeah, it's sort of an out of sight, out of mind type mentality. And so my primary concern with explosion of IoT and of the demand for electric vehicles is, yeah, it's great, it's absolutely great, but they all require lithium or cadmium batteries. And there are some estimates that there are going to be 10 trillion IoT devices, mostly relying on batteries by 2030. And if you think about it, lithium is mined in some of the most sensitive ecosystems in the world, in Northern Australia, Western Australia, in the Atacama Desert in Chile. And the complete lack of recycling of availability of lithium and cadmium type batteries. And so you've got this whole sort of like, let's just shift the problem somewhere else and let's claim that our city is really environmentally friendly. The second concern is the sort of reliance on renewable energies to gain those efficiency. Yeah, it's great, we're using wind farms, we're using photovoltaic. But you've got to remember that there is an inherent cost in developing photovoltaic cells, and there's an inherent ecological impact of wind farms, which is only just beginning to be understood. So while the city is benefiting from all of those technologies, other places are bearing the brunt of it. So I think in realistic terms, my conclusion is that while a smart city may look like it's environmentally friendly, we have to really consider it in a holistic way, or we'll end up in the same position as we did with catalytic converters. So there we go.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So we're going into competition with a neighbour on our home energy use, but we need to think about the batteries in our cars. So everyone in the audience then, so if you grab your smartphones again, scan the QR code, or if you visit slido.com, #CGI Smart Cities, hopefully you've still got it open from the main presentation. So we're interested in your vote. Do you think smart cities are environmentally friendly? You've got a yes or a no option. Perhaps you think it depends on some of the initiatives that are taking place, or if you're not sure, even after hearing our arguments, perhaps you could choose that as an option. I'm hoping that you can see my screen, and this should build dynamically as people start to access the poll. So again, the QR code is on the bottom left of the screen. If you scan that with the camera on your phone, or you can visit slido.com, #CGI Smart Cities. We've got even split. Oh, we nearly had even split. Yes, no. It depends is winning at the moment, 75%. We'll just give it a minute. So 22% of you say yes, smart cities are environmentally friendly. You're sold on that argument. 67% it depends, and a few still not sure. Okay, we'll move us on. Put your phones away. We're going to do this poll after each question. We're interested in your point of view as we work through this. We'll feed this back to the organisers as well. So next question then, and Ian, I will come to you first for the pro argument. So is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it?
Yeah, I know I'm supposed to be the optimist in this debate, Kate, but this one does worry me. So in our country, we have a digital divide, and coronavirus has made this very, very plain, hasn't it? Did you know that for households with an annual income of less than £10,000, about half of them have a home internet connection? That's 99% for households with an income of more than 40,000. So and I think there's a clear link there between inequality and digital exclusion. So, for example, when children were being taught at home during the pandemic, there were 700,000 11 to 18-year-olds, that's 1 in 8, who didn't have home internet access from a computer or tablet. So if we let that continue, digital exclusion will start to perpetuate itself, and our children will be denied opportunities by the continuing move to online. It's not just the kids. More than 30% of over 65s lack digital skills. 25% of registered disabled people are completely offline, compared to 6% in the overall population. So what that means is, if you're a city planner and you're using data sets that were acquired online, then those groups probably are underrepresented. So there's a risk that they get left behind and forgotten in decision making. As well as underuse, there's a risk of misuse. So we live in the era of big tech. So globally, there are a few large companies who control vast amounts of data. We're wielding a lot of power over us and our societies. The data is the new oil, isn't it? AI is the future, but now we begin to see the data sets that are used to train those AIs. We learn that there's racial bias, there's gender bias. So I'm supposed to be the optimist, aren't I? So I need to offer a solution. So for me, this isn't my idea, but other people have talked about the idea of data commons. So in the same way as if we have a park or a green space in a city, we can manage that for everybody for the common good. And I was very struck by Lizzie's rich picture earlier on. Can we have that legal, that technical, that social framework that enables us to manage our data as a shared resource? But to make that real, if I was, would I be willing personally to share some of my medical data with researchers to make a better vaccine? Yes, I would. I'm not quite so sure how I'd feel, though, if there was then a big pharma that was selling that back to the NHS at a large profit. So for me, I'm willing to share my data, but I need to know on a case-by-case basis the purpose to which it's being put.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Sounds not sure. So, Paul, what have you got for us that can counter Ian's argument?
So I think Ian has played heavily into my hands there, hasn't he? In terms of, yeah, there are lots of things around this. My primary concern is the cost of entry, like Ian was saying, the reliance or the assumption of smartphone devices. I worry if we move towards like a cashless society and cryptocurrencies, because that just massively discriminates against elderly people and the less fortunate in society. Those are things that people who are young and affluent can possibly get into. And that sort of worry extends to there's the fact that there's some sort of inherent opt-in culture where you override your individual concerns or your individual status as a citizen. I mean, we've seen during the pandemic just means when we have a forced adoption of restrictive practices. You know, the fact that I could have been made a criminal for actually going to Wales is an amazing thing in my lifetime, and that sort of the idea that you could impose that sort of thing is quite worrying when you think about what a municipal authority could start to do in a city if they so choose. There's a big question regarding those who can't give consent. So children are a massive issue there, aren't they? And severely disabled or impaired. You know, I worry about the fact that a 17-year-old girl 10 days off her birthday is still a child as far as the law is concerned. But from an AI perspective and trying to identify how old somebody is from a camera, that's not easy. So you've got an inherent issue around age and consent and all those sorts of things. And there's also a sort of an assumption that progress is progress for everybody. I quite imagine that if you went to some elements of society, maybe some more elderly people or maybe young mothers with children, and ask them, do you want more frequent access to public toilets, or would you rather have a smart car park, or rather have, God forbid, an internet connected smartphone operated toilet? I'm pretty sure they'd just say, I want access to the services, I just want access to the toilet. I don't need it to be smart and I don't need it to be thing. And so some people will have thought, hey, that's great, and it's saving us money because we've now got data on how often it's used, and we can work out how often to clean it and all that sort of thing. But from an individual's perspective, I don't believe that that's particularly. So it's so my conclusion, I think, is that I worry that it creates in danger of creating an elitist society for those who have opted in or walked into it without thinking about it, against those who either can't or don't particularly want to opt into it.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Paul. Sounds like there's a lot of pros and cons involved in this one. There's a bit of thought required. So everyone, phones at the ready again. We're just going to poll you. What do you think? What side of the debate are you coming on? Is everyone living in a smart city involved and able to access it? So we've got a clear no so far. Just while we're waiting for responses to come in, Paul, your audio is so slightly dipping in and out. Perhaps you can just reset your headset or something when we come to the next question. So we're still on 100% no at the moment. We'll just give it another minute or two, and then in the interest of time, we'll move on to our next question. It depends again. I think this is what we're hearing, isn't it? There's two sides to the debate, and there's not necessarily any clear decision either way, although maybe we've got 75% no so far. So we're coming down on the against side. It depends, 43%. Perhaps if we mitigate some of the factors that we've discussed, that may change people's minds. Still majority no. Okay. Thanks everyone for participating. We're going to ask you this question again after our next debate, and then we're going to sum up at the end and ask you for your key takeaways. So keep your phones handy. So our next question then, and Paul, perhaps I'll come to you first this time. Are smart cities safer for residents? Paul, which side of the fence are you coming down on this time?
Right, so hopefully my microphone is working a bit better now, but I still worry in terms of what we consider safer. I've got privacy concerns about who is collecting the data and reason, and as Ian said in the previous thing, how is that being commercialized? I wonder about whether it's safety for the whole or safety for the individual. Now, the example that I would give is that, yeah, in a smart city, we can dim the lights at night so that we save money. But if there's a single female walking home at night down the road and all the lights have been dimmed, that's probably not safety for her, it's safety for the individual. So get even smarter and have situations that understand things like that, where it's like individual safety as opposed to safety of the masses. I also worry a lot about AI ethics and about who makes decisions and the devolution of authority. So AI algorithms tend to be fairly opaque, and what concerns me is who decides. Is it the developer? Is it the authority that's decided to employ that data? Who takes the responsibility when things go wrong? I was talking to Ian earlier when we were discussing this, and I said, if you had a AI on a video CCTV system that was able to detect when somebody was carrying a weapon or was carrying a knife or machete, and there's a guy walking down the road with some flowers under his coat because he wants to, surprise his girlfriend or wife, and it doesn't understand flowers underneath the coat, so it decides that it's a weapon, and it calls out automatically an armed response or something like that. Somebody has to say, hang on, this guy wasn't doing anything wrong, but the AI got it wrong. And I don't know who takes the blame for that. AI bias and its inherent dangers we've talked about. If it's been trained on only guns and knives, what happens when it's flowers? I also worry about the greater attack surface for criminals. You've got individuals such as identity spoofing, making people look like they're other individuals and all that sort of thing. You've got issues around groups and bias and individual freedoms that I think need considering quite closely. And the society as a whole, I think around the whole shift towards AI and surveillance and AI spoofing, the potential for bringing a city to its knees through unexpected consequences. Anybody old enough to have seen The Italian Job, where they throw a bike into the power station and mess around with the traffic lights, yeah, they have to do some very physical things. Well, in these day and age, as was demonstrated in the Berlin experiment by the street artist, I can't remember his name, Simon Vertek, who put 99 phones in a trolley and walked down Berlin street and effectively made Google Maps think there was a massive traffic jam in that situation. And anybody who was relying on that data got diverted completely away from that street. He managed to empty that street as far as from a digital perspective. So I think my conclusion is that we need to think very clearly, objectively and intelligently about how smart cities evolve and what does safety actually mean.
Thanks, Paul. And safety from a number of different vantage points, as you say, data being one of them. So Ian, I'll hand over to you. Cheer us all up.
I'll do my best. Yeah, I think I was struck by the number of times in our previous sessions tonight that the word trust was used. And I read somewhere that the countries that had dealt best with the coronavirus pandemic were those where there was a high level of trust of the government and institutions. I'm not quite sure where we are on some kind of spectrum in the UK, but I think it's very easy to pick out edge cases which make good stories, but actually, we've become used for some decades now to CCTV in our town centres. Maybe with the advent of intelligent smart TV backed by those AI models, yes, we can actually we can increase not only collective safety but individual safety as well. Things like crowd mood detection algorithms which enable the police or security to intervene in a particular situation in a targeted way that would keep us all safer. So as I said earlier, I'm worried about the risk of bias in AI models, but as with all technology, there's a maturity curve. We're probably at the beginning of this one. So yeah, I think on balance, it's always this thing that we're weighing up. How much of our individual freedom are we willing to give up to feel collectively safer?
Indeed. Okay, so hopefully we've given you all a bit of food for thought there. So same question again, over to you. Are smart cities safer for residents? Really interested to see what you all think of this one. I wonder if we'll get a few. It depends. Again, having given you the arguments there. So if you need it, again, the QR code that you scan with your camera is on the bottom left. Slido.com, and the event code is CGI Smart Cities. We'll just spend a minute on this slide just as you're all hopefully voting away, and then the next slide we've your key takeaway from the session. So we perhaps haven't got time to take any questions, but if you do have any questions, you can input it on the next poll, and we can pick those up with the organisers and try and get those cascaded out. The audience is split. We've got 33% yes, no, not sure, it depends, not sure. It's a tricky one, this, isn't it? There's different elements to safety, and it depends how you look at it. I think that's perhaps why we're getting the it depends point. We'll just give it a moment or two for it to settle. Yeah, so I think it depends is coming out as the winner, and then interestingly, no, we don't think, the majority don't think smart cities are safer for residents, or perhaps with the it depends, there is a majority there, it just depends on what procedures are put in place. Okay, well, thanks everyone very much for voting. Our last slide then, well, over to you again. What's your key takeaway from the session? This is just free text, you can input a few words if you've got a question. Anything you'd like to follow up on, or perhaps, you know, from the overall session, you've just got some thoughts that you'd like to input, or perhaps if you've marked it depends, you can just give us a sentence or so on what your parameters were for that response. We've got a couple of minutes just before we all zoom back to the main thread. So we thought this would be quite good just to get your feedback. We'll just give it a minute. Hopefully you're all prefer the it depends as an answer. All of you got a response to that one? I feel like you may have a response to that one.
Yeah, I think that is very true. Security people sit on the fence and say, well, you know, you've got to balance the risk versus the opportunities and all that sort of thing. So I think it's very true that it needs a debate, and it needs intelligent debate is I think what I would characterize as you know, that's what it depends is a really means, doesn't it? You have to balance very many different competing things there.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the comments here, who checks the people who have the data? We've got more CCTV, it's not necessarily safer, and safety and being safe is all relative. Of course it is. Different people have different perspectives on that, and different regions will have different perspectives as well. You know, perhaps there's an urban and a rural play, or different areas around the world will have a different view. So it's interesting, Ian, you picked up on the trust point. The most important factor in a smart city is trust. I think.
And also, I think that debate that Paul mentioned, it feels to me like we're at the beginning of that public debate. And yeah, there is that. Let's recall that in the 19th century, when trains were introduced, there were people who thought that if they travelled at more than 30 miles per hour, their heads would fall off. So we will look back, I think, in 50 years, and I think about some of the things we've discussed tonight and laugh, because that's how we make progress.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got cybersecurity solutions. I think as we're approaching 7:30, I think we will all zoom back into the main conference. I'm not sure we get a countdown, but yeah, cybersecurity solutions to make this world class. We'll definitely pick up the point there about an organisation to get in touch with. So thank you for that one. GDPR, yeah, continues to be an ongoing challenge and opportunity for organisations. Clearly, we need to think why smart cities following the same trends as present cities. needs to sell itself as something for the future, not running it as a business. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. Okay, we're bang on time. I expect us all to zoom back into the main conference any moment.
Okay, welcome back to the rest of our show. I hope you really enjoyed the breakout sessions. They were really interesting. I was listening into one of them, and lots to think about there. I hope you had quite a good interaction. We do in CyNam really try our best to make it as interactive as possible, particularly when we're online. So we've talked a lot about connected places, we've talked about smart cities, but when we think about this, how do we know that our cars are safe and our mobility is good in smart cities? And it's now my pleasure to introduce Sophia McCall. She is security consultant and chapter admin for the Ladies of Cheltenham Hacking Society. Sophia is a recent BSc Cybersecurity Management graduate from Bournemouth University, now working in the industry as a security consultant for NCC Group. Sophia has recently joined the admin team at the Ladies of Cheltenham Hacking Society and also co-founded the Security Queens brand in 2019. Sophia's interest continues to grow around automotive hacking, and she hopes to specialise in this field in the near future. Sophia, over to you.
Hi there, so my name's Sophia, and today we'll be talking about the security risks of the cars of the future. So first, a little bit about me, which has previously actually been mentioned, but first and foremost, I'm an admin for Ladies Cheltenham Hacking Society. I'm also a security consultant for NCC Group. I recently graduated university last year, as well as founding the brand Security Queens. I was also team captain for ECSC in 2019, and you may have seen me on TV as a cyber hunter on Channel 4's Hunted. In recent years, I've also won a few awards under my belt, including Best Cybersecurity Student. So, automotive hacking, why is it actually bad? Well, first, a quick introduction to CNI. When we talk about national infrastructure, we're talking about the things that a country depends on to function in day-to-day life. And surprise, surprise, transport is in there. So, about 40 or 50 years ago, similar to the cars on the screen, we were basically driving around tin cans on the roads. But now with a predicted 18 million connected and autonomous vehicles available to the public by 2030, we're now pretty much driving computers on wheels. With most modern vehicles that are connected in some way or form, autonomous vehicles will require more embedded technologies to achieve full autonomy. So we see this paradigm shift from physical security to cybersecurity, with attack surfaces growing beyond just physical attacks. And if you're a car fanatic like me, you might have recognized those three minis from the Italian Job. So now we continue about automotive hacking and why it's actually bad. Well, when you see headlines like these, and when you see words like this, it can be quite concerning. So first, we're going to talk about the risk components within connected vehicles and how we can attack them. So firstly, we're going to talk about in-vehicle infotainment systems. This could be something like your CyNam or your multimedia devices, such as Bluetooth, USB, and Wi-Fi. It may play your radio, but it usually has an in-cabin driver display as well, and provides as a hub for software and firmware updates. Commonly, you can attack these systems through malware injection via the USB port, and you can start to tamper with the software and firmware uploaded to that system. You can also jam the various different technologies, such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, and you can start spoofing and sniffing that data too. Now, ADAS systems are, again, a very common component of most modern vehicles. It combines various different functions and sensors, such as ABS, TPS, and emergency braking, and this is commonly displayed on the IVI system within the car. This particular system can be adapted for autonomous vehicles and integrated into driverless technologies, which we'll talk a bit about in a moment, and also incorporate V2x Communications and smart city integration. There are various ways you can attack these systems, most commonly denial of service, but you can also tamper with the configuration and spoof some of the sensors attached to that system, as well as attack IVI itself. Now, Obd2 and Canvas, historically probably the most popular way to attack a car. Obd2 ports are ports that are used to diagnose faults within the vehicle, and because of this are legally required by all manufacturers. The Obd2 port provides the central gateway for the CAN bus inside the car. A CAN bus is a peer-to-peer physical network inside the car that connects the whole range of control units so they can talk to each other. Different components usually mean different control units. It's quite easy to manipulate this CAN data through that direct connection in the Obd2 port by spoofing, replaying, or crafting your own messages to hijack ECUs, or you could perhaps flood CAN data to completely jam that Obd2 port itself. PCAS systems, my car actually has this itself, makes me quite paranoid, but this is very common in modern vehicles. It basically replaces traditional car entry by improving user experience and improving the efficiency in securing cars. You can just walk up to the car, not even have to take out your bag, and it will unlock the car or lock it as you walk away. It's needed to start the vehicle, and it will not start if the key is not in the proximity of the car, and uses a special type of cryptography to identify key fobs. The most common attack in this particular technology is relay attacks to open and start the car. But again, you can try jam it or even clone the key to then walk up to the car and try open it. Telematics devices, often used by insurance companies. They use positional data to kind of gauge how your car is being driven. So when the car is being driven, your driving style, it uses the control unit and communicates with the TSP over some cellular infrastructure to try get there. Again, you can try spoof the data being uploaded to the platform, or you can try jam or sniff the data, or even compromise the associated user accounts on the UMI. And finally, over-the-air software and firmware updates, again, common in modern vehicles. This allows vendors to remotely deploy updates to the vehicle and its embedded components and software. It helps fix issues or bugs, upgrade security, upgrade functionality, and also deploy new functionality. You can insert these updates and actually try tamper or modify them through a man-in-the-middle attack, or you can try perform a DOS attack whilst it's in transmission or in storage. So now we're going to talk about autonomous vehicles. Is this the future? There's a predicted 8 million autonomous vehicles available to the public market by 2025. This means completely driverless and completely roadworthy for the public highway. Commonly, autonomous vehicles will use something called a V2x infrastructure, vehicle to everything. Using both 5G cellular and intelligent transport systems, it will try to integrate itself into smart city infrastructure, providing environment, traffic data, and safety alerts through real-time broadcasts. So now we're going to run through how to attack those. So the most important component of an autonomous vehicle is the AI and machine learning components itself. These are used to achieve a higher autonomy, and the algorithms help the components within the vehicle perform decision-based tasks to improve the ability to predict situations, which prove incredibly safety critical. So using AI and machine learning helps improve the driver automation in accordance to the SAE J3016 standard for defining levels of driver automation. Right now, we're between sort of 0 and 2, perhaps a little bit of 3. And when we move towards the future of a completely driverless vehicle, we're looking between 3 and 5. Surprise, surprise, you can perform a denial of service attack on these driven sensors, but you can also spoof fake data or inject your own data into the algorithms to try attack it as well. AI and machine learning components use all sorts of sensors to try assess the environment. One of this is cameras. Cameras react to the surroundings and alert the driver, usually through the IVI system, such as lane departure, traffic moving, or a collision alert. And this helps the vehicle map its surroundings in cohesion with other sensors such as radar and Lidar. So you can, again, perform a denial of service against a camera through a blinding attack, or you can even manipulate scenery to fool the sensor to project fake obstructions or fake signs. Another autonomous sensor used is Lidar, and helps AI and machine learning components, again, help visualize the assessment of the environment. What Lidar is, it's basically a sensor that rotates on top of the car, emitting thousands and thousands of lasers to help detect objects. When that laser bounces back, it will measure that distance and then create a 3D map of the environment. It's quite easy to spoof Lidar and detect objects that aren't there. And again, you can jam it as well to perform a denial of service attack. But you can also do replay-relay attacks to detect objects that aren't there by replaying parts to the sensor. And finally, let's just have a little chat about V2x Communications. This particular infrastructure implementation allows vehicles to communicate with each other and the environment. It's very, very prominent in smart city infrastructure, and it improves passenger and driver experience, as well as safety and efficiency. Example data includes personal data or perhaps sensor and vehicle data. It's quite unfortunately easy to sniff this kind of data through a man-in-the-middle attack, or you can either manipulate or replay that data. And again, you can perform a denial of service against this infrastructure as well. So automotive and smart cities, what could actually go wrong? We've talked a lot about how you can attack these cars. So things like data theft, by credentials or vehicle data or location data. Of course, there'll be a major disruption to C&I if you can start tampering with smart city infrastructure involving autonomous vehicles. You might have the threat of hacktivism or pranking by script kiddies, but it's most likely there'll be some sort of financial gain from this through ransoming and selling data, or perhaps stealing the vehicles itself. Kind of moving up the severity of the attack. You could even have something called cyber espionage, where advanced persistent threats are trying to target and cripple rival nations. So I appreciate that's been quite a quick run through of what can happen with hacking cars and smart city infrastructure, but feel free to reach out to me on either of those platforms, and don't forget to check out Ladies Hacking Society and Security Queens. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you, Sophia, so much there. I'm just glad that I'm cycling home tonight and not driving in my car. So we're getting towards the end of the program, but there's still some great stuff coming up. Now we're going to actually move over to NCSC again, and I'm going to introduce Chris Earnshaw, Deputy Director for Cyber Skills and Growth. He's going to hopefully tell us a bit about the NCSC's new approach to innovation. Chris, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Reid. Yeah, I'm Chris Earnshaw, one of the Deputy Directors of the National Cybersecurity Centre, and I'm responsible for the NCSC Accelerator. So over the last 10 years, we've had 2 cybersecurity strategies, and both of those have challenged GCHQ to use its expertise and brand to support that broader prosperity agenda. That's led to the creation of 2 innovation centres, one in London, Lorca, and one in Cheltenham, which is the one I've been involved in. And really the central part of the Cheltenham Innovation Centre has been the NCSC Accelerator. And over the last 4 years, we've engaged with 40 companies who between them have raised £100 million in revenue. So I think, that's been a fantastic success. Why are we different? Well, NCSC's mission is to make the UK a safe place to live and work online. And we have people out every day working with sectors within the critical infrastructure, with government, with charities, with schools, with all those kind of areas. And we see the problems organisations have. And that plus our expertise, I think, gives us some pretty unique insights. And I think really for me, that's why we're different. We have those insights and we have the expertise, and bringing those together, I think, is kind of where magic happens. And if we can find, companies out there with ideas that kind of solve some of those problems, then, that's really where magic happens. And for me, it is all about finding, those unique ideas that can either stop or reduce the harm that we see every day. Every day you will see headlines and newspaper reports and on the news about another cyber attack. We want to find ideas that will really either stop those happening, or when they do happen, because they're kind of inevitable, how can we reduce the harm of when that happens? And I think, really smart cities are a really good example. If we take the theme of today, and if I look back across our cohorts, if I look across our alumni, because we're building a great community of talented companies companies with some great ideas. If I look across them, then, you know, there's quite a number of them that fit into that smart city space. And it's a talent that we can then dip into when we're trying to understand some of the problems, we're trying to solve some of the problems smart cities have. And I'm often asked, you know, what is GCHQ going to do with these companies? You know, what is it? And sometimes, actually, for the majority of companies, just helping them through the accelerator and helping them to grow and think about their ideas is exactly what we do. Remember, our mission is to make the UK a safe place to live and work online. And having companies out there who can help do that is exactly what we try to do. But just occasionally, they will align what their ideas are thinking about, and some of the research we are doing will align. And often, you know, where that happens, we will extend our relationship with them. And again, here's a bit of an example where that has happened, where, you know, we've worked with some large organizations, but also some of the smaller companies we've found to come up with some, you know, to explore some of the challenges that you have when you're kind of trying to secure something as complex as a smart city. But tonight, I really want to look forward. Because, you know, over the last 4 years, we've learned an awful lot about how you run an accelerator, how you work with small companies. And I think, you know, that in itself is interesting. You bring a large government department, particularly a security department, with those companies, and you learn an awful lot. So looking forward, so today we launch NCSC for Startups. And this takes over from the NCSC Accelerator, and it pulls together a lot of the lessons that we've learned over the last 4 years. It's also a great opportunity to introduce a new partner. And this new partner is a consortium. It's a consortium of local and national talent led by Plexel. Great new opportunities with that. So it's my great pleasure this evening to introduce you to Sarge Huck. Sarge, tell us about Plexel, tell us about your role, and tell us about some of your partners.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And hello, everyone. So I'm Sarge Huck, Director of Innovation at Plexel, and we have the privilege and are delighted to be leading and working with the NCSC to deliver NCSC for Startups, which we're launching today. As Chris has just alluded to, in delivering NCSC for Startups, we've assembled a market-leading team, and which comprises local and regional expertise with national and international reach. That expertise, I'm happy to say, includes CyNam, of course, and we're delighted to be part of this fantastic event today, as well as Hub8, the melting pot, the physical melting pot of ideas and collaboration in Cheltenham, together with industry leaders in Deloitte and QA, to really add differentiated value to the UK cybersecurity ecosystem through this new program. So why are we so excited not just to deliver this initiative, but also to be here in Cheltenham? Well, quite simply, this is where it's at for cybersecurity in the UK. This is where the expertise is. This is where the capability is deep. This is where the density of talent is rich. And that's why we're here. And this is an incredibly exciting place to launch a business, to grow a business, to build a business, and to succeed in business in cybersecurity. And that's why we've brought together this team, and we're delighted to be working with the NCSC, as I've said. So, NCSC for Startups, what does that entail, and why is that such a unique and exciting opportunity for cybersecurity startups? Well, quite simply, we want to take those insights, which Chris has mentioned, and those ideas and expertise, which is world-leading, and pair it with the businesses who have the highest potential to develop and support and enable products to get to market, which can be the best products and help address the most critical market needs in cybersecurity, both now and into the future. That's it. And that's why this is such a unique opportunity for cybersecurity founders and startups across the UK to really immerse yourself in this ecosystem. So what do we mean by pairing insights, expertise with products? Well, we want to explore and prove new concepts with emerging businesses who have emerging technologies, and they're looking for ideas and guidance of how to apply those and where best to apply those. We want to pivot technologies into cybersecurity and across the cybersecurity domain to try and address emerging market needs and try and explore new applications of technologies. And we also want to work with our range of partners to support in applying those solutions to specific use cases and solving specific problems. And this program is going to be problem-centric and focused on helping products be the best that they can be, and therefore startups become the best that they can be. And that's why we're so excited to have this opportunity, and we're really, really looking forward to working with the next wave of innovators who will come through our virtual and physical doors in Cheltenham. So, how do you get involved? Well, we are calling on applicants to get in touch, and Chris will go into a few more details shortly about how you will engage with the program. But I just wanted to emphasize the opportunity here for startups. So simply, we're looking for those who want to work with this community and work in this ecosystem. We're looking to support you to do that. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Chris.
Thanks, Serge. And it's really great, actually, to be able to work with you sort of firsthand, because you've been running Lorca now for the last couple of years. And of course, that was set up by our colleagues in the Digital Culture, Media and Sport department. And I've sort of worked with you from afar, but I think the fact that you're now in Cheltenham and you're going to be working with us on NCSE for startups is really quite exciting. And I think the mix of that, a set of national organisations and local organisations gives us a whole new set of things we can experiment with. And I do love a good experiment. Let's test out some new things. And I think for me, the good example of that is, we had feedback to say we used to run in cohorts. Mm-hmm. So we'd put out a challenge, and then we'd have a group of companies in, and we'd work with them for 6 months, 9 months, or whatever. And the feedback we were getting was that it's too rigid. There's not enough flexibility in that. Mm-hmm. And I think the new approach, where we'll have a much more open door and be much more flexible and agile. So as problems arise, I can envisage, we've got a particular problem that's arising. Let's open the door and let's see what's out there, and we can bring them in much quicker and have a much more rich experience. It's
a really good point, Chris, and actually that's why this new program, I should also say, is that it caters to a whole range of maturity of companies. So it's relevant for many because it's so specific on the problem that we're trying to address. We're looking for businesses from really early stage all the way through to more mature companies as well to join us. And if there was one, if there's one lesson you'd learned, from your experiences down in Lorca and down in London, what do you think it would be? Yeah, I think cybersecurity is sometimes a challenging domain to innovate in, because identifying those needs, the market, what the market really needs is quite tricky. Cybersecurity typically is a topic that a lot of companies don't really want to talk about the problems they're having because of the nature of the subject and the sensitivity of it. So therefore, that's why I think the insights which the NCSE brings to this, it's just so powerful in really catalysing that development. And therefore, for startups to actually be so close to the needs by working with us on that, I think that will make a real difference. And for those startups that we've worked with before through Lorca, those who have been needs-led and market-orientated, are obviously the ones who have done very, very well. You said innovating in cybersecurity is different, and I think you're right, because a lot of things we're trying to do in cybersecurity is actually mitigate the risks that have come about through maybe not great engineering or holes that have been left. And that is slightly different to what normal innovation is about. It's about pulling something together quite quickly, so that you can show a customer and show, but this is a bit different, isn't it? Absolutely. I've said this a few times before, that I think the concept of a minimal viable product doesn't work in cybersecurity. You can't go to market with a minimal viable product, because it will cause so many problems and it will create new risks. And that's why you do really need to work with the experts and develop robust solutions you know, especially in such a complicated area.
Yeah, I mean, certainly introducing a security product, you think, oh, it's going to improve my security. But then it actually has some vulnerabilities in it.
Yeah.
And so it actually reduces your security. So you almost get that false sense of confidence, I think, that you're actually managing a risk. I think and that's why I think it's so interesting and fascinating working in innovation in cybersecurity. It is very different.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, so we are open for business. The new chapter is opened. It's really exciting. If you have any ideas that you think will solve some of the problems that we have today, I'm going to put up the address. Please get in touch with us, and we look forward to myself and Sarge look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Gosh, how do you follow that? What an amazing announcement for tonight and for the Cheltenham, Gloucestershire and the UK. NCSC for startups. I know Chris talks a lot about engineering serendipity, and I think we're doing some heavy engineering on serendipity tonight. Having Plexel as part of the ecosystem, that is so awesome. And what is so amazing is the way that we are building this incredible ecosystem across government, academia, industry, startups, and so on. And we can see a little bit of a flavor of that tonight, but who knows what's going to happen in the coming years, and particularly as we start to think about Golden Valley and scaling things up. But of course, to do this, we need to have the right people, people who are in the industry, but actually also the next generation. And we're so privileged to have students as part of our ecosystem. And it's my pleasure to hand over to Karen Spenley, Chartered Engineer. She's going to host a student panel session about the ever important topic of people, planet, and technology. So Karen's got some students from Gloucestershire College, from Camden, from Stroud High School and Cleves School, and really interested to see what's going to come out of this. As a result, incidentally, of the last student showcase, some of our students have been offered work experience and apprenticeships. So it's just great to have our students with us today. Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Reid, and welcome to our student showcase for today. I've got 4 amazing students with me on the sofa, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Oliver Pinfold. I'm a Year 12 student at Chipping Camden High School, studying A-levels in maths, further maths and computer science.
Hi, I'm Sam. I study digital forensics and cybersecurity at Gloucestershire College at HND.
Hi, my name's George Brown. I'm a Year 13 student at Cleves School, and I've just finished my A-levels in computer science and further maths, and I'm moving on to a degree in AI and computer science.
Hi, I'm Sai Shreya. I study in Stroud High School. I'm Year 9, and I have a passion for computer science.
My name's Karen Spenley. I studied engineering, and I'm currently the Technology Sustainability Advisor for Schlumberger. Now, as Reid mentioned, today's topic is people, planet, and technology. Can technology help or hinder our lives and life on this planet? I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask the students so that we can get their perspectives. So, Sammy, you're up first. What technological changes would you want to see in your environment to make the area you live a better place?
I think mostly public transport, digitalising public transport would be important, because not only is public transport popular in cities, but it's not very popular in rural areas. And I think if we can digitalise that, maybe by promoting it more, maybe these gigantic LED bus stop signs you see in the cities and towns, and encouraging people to use public transport is the best way to go, because not only is using public transport probably more efficient, but it also means that the national grid can then have, in future when we release electric cars, can then have, that power and everything. I've sort of gone a bit blue here, but yeah, I think digitalising public transport is the main thing really, and encouraging people to use public transport.
Yeah, no, you make an interesting point, particularly for rural communities.
It's good for the environment as well. If people use public transport, then they don't need to use their cars. You see people travelling couple of miles up the road to the shop and back in their cars, and it's just not worth it if there's a bus you can take and everyone can get on that bus. Yeah. It's just not worth it.
It's tricky, isn't it? So I'm going to ask you the same question.
I also think public transport, because as a school student, I get on the public bus and it takes me 15 minutes to get to school. There are some other buses that come a bit faster and a bit more reliable, but I'd say the average cost for that per month, if I were taking it, would be £100. And I think that we can improve it by sorting out that awkwardness with the purses and getting out your cash or your card, because everyone gets nervous by that. I even get nervous by that. So I think we need to digitalise the way we pay and use a few more reward schemes as well.
Interesting, thank you. George, can you give us an example of one thing where you think technology could help us with climate change?
So I think one of the main risks when it comes to climate change is the combustion of fossil fuels. So the way we can limit that or offset it can be really crucial. One of the ways I think that we can try and improve efficiency when it comes to electricity is by using AI. So whether it's using reinforcement learning to find new superconductors that can operate at room temperatures, or using AI to distribute energy more effectively through the national grid. I think technology can be a real asset to helping with climate change.
It's interesting, yeah, efficiency, important but quite often forgotten topic. Cy, back to you. What areas of our lives do you think can most benefit from improvements in technology, and how?
I think transport again, because it's a big part of life for many people, school students, people who have jobs. I think that, again, digitalising the way we pay for many things would help. For example, we all wear smartwatches, we have iPhones, and if we can get rid of, having to take out our purses or having to take out cash all the time, and we can digitalise maybe bus cards even. Stagecoach have cards that you just tap. I think that would be an easier way, and if we set up reward schemes for everything, you'd get more people coming to separate companies.
Okay, thank you. So following on the transport theme, Oliver, what do you think, or what do you see as the future of travel or transport, and what would you like to see happen over the next 10 years?
Yeah, well, we should consider what we've seen in the past 10 years, and what we've seen is this absolute surge in popularity in electric vehicles. And I think by looking at that, we can predict that we're probably going to see a similar thing happen again. I think in the next decade, electric vehicles are going to become much more widespread and probably much cheaper as well. I think that we could see that same technology implemented into the public transport sector. I think by then we could have the power to power buses by electricity. Mm-hmm. I think there's also the possibility that there could be a great increase in tax on petrol and diesel cars. But then we're going to need to be careful when implementing that law, because we'd have to somehow dispose of that waste material, because these vehicles are now becoming redundant. So what are we going to do with that scrap metal? It's going to have to be disposed of in some kind of eco-friendly way, and who knows what that could be.
There's many complexities, aren't there? So moving on to the smart city, Sammy, can you give us an example of one thing you'd like to see in a smart city?
Yeah, and it actually sort of links into what George was saying, and it's the sense that it's all about efficiency nowadays. I think that's the direction we have to head into. So one thing I personally see that we should all be getting is smart meters in our homes for electricity, because currently there is no way of seeing real-time electric usage in your home. And smart meters enable some homeowners to be able to see that. And I think that's very important, because the amount of energy we waste and electricity we waste on things we're not using that are still plugged in and switched on. Think about, it's summer now, fans. How many fans have we got at home plugged in, switched on, not being used, and how much electricity that's using? It might not be a lot, but every household could be doing that, and it's adding up. And if we all could see how much we're using and could go, oh, I might go and turn that off, then that's going to help the national grid, who have already publicly said that should we all go electric with cars, they will struggle to supply the power for that, and they might have to get supply from other countries. which is great as long as you're getting along with those countries. And yeah, so I think if we're all ready to go electric, we need to start thinking about reducing our electricity usage.
Yeah, so data for decision making and efficiency.
Yes,
Interesting.
very much.
Oliver, same question to you.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to say about this is that what my definition of a smart city is one that can sustain itself. I hope that cities would be able to be designed in a way in which they have their own ecosystem of technology and power. In this case, it would mean that these areas in these cities would almost be able to be bubbled off from the rest of society. We would never have to worry about supplying them any power because they'd be able to generate their own through their own sustainable methods. It would mean that these places would be able to run indefinitely into the future in a sustainable way, which is exactly what we desire.
Gosh, it's quite a design challenge though.
Yeah.
George, over to you. In your opinion, what has been the most positive impact technology has had on the environment and why?
Well, I think in the past couple of decades, the internet has been a real catalyst for innovation. And I think using that has helped facilitate in spreading awareness like we're doing now with this webinar.
Interesting. So the last question I'm going to ask to all 4 students, and it's quite a challenging one. Can they paint a positive picture of what a smart city means to you and perhaps what you see your role in it could be? Cy, we'll start with you.
Well, I think that we always focus on the negatives of technology and technological uses. But I think if we could start focusing on the positives, such as how technology is contributing to climate change, then we would be able to see the bigger picture. For example, Ecosia, it's a search engine that's very well known to plant trees every single time you search something on it. And I think that if we bring about a more awareness of different search engines like this, then we could start changing the planet.
The link between the two. George?
Well, I think biodiversity is really the natural infrastructure that sustains life on this planet. So it's really important that we keep that in place more than technology. And I think technology has been a real enabler for, in the past few decades, for the negative impact on the environment. So if we can turn that around and actually turn it into a positive, that could be a really
biodiversity,
good thing.
Massively important. Sammy?
Well, it's kind of funny because people, planet and technology, it's about people using technology to save the planet. But at the moment, people are sort of the problem, because we're not using enough technology. We're all relying on combustion still. And, people are the problem, but people are also the solution. So it's all about sort of what George was saying, remembering that, we need to look after this planet we live on. And I think, linking back to my other question with the electric cars is, simple things like that, technology like that, but also relying on the people that can come up with that sort of thing, It's not a secret that people aren't sort of up to the level of knowledge that we should be in this to live in this planet that we now live in, and I think we should all really be focusing sort of on that future goal, that image that we want to live in.
What a challenge.
Yeah, well, what I had in mind was similar to what Cy was saying, is that everyone's so obsessed with focusing on all the negatives all the time, but why can't we look at the positives? The media is so focused on showing us this nightmarish, almost dystopian future of what could happen if we don't act now. But why are we never shown what could happen if we do, and if we do pursue these new technologies? And I just think that the fear-mongering method that we're going with right now to make people act isn't really working, as well as what I think giving people incentive by portraying this possible utopia that we could achieve could help us to develop into that future that we desire.
Gosh, wow, thank you.
It's all about education.
So gosh, I know I'm not the only one that's going to think we've got so much to think about, so many opportunities and challenges. So I'd personally like to thank Cy, George, Sammy and Oliver for all of their amazing and thought-provoking answers today. Reid, over to you.
Gosh, I mean, such wisdom there. The thing that really came across to me was that thing at the end about changing the narratives and coming up with stories that really resonate with people and moving beyond that sort of dystopia. So, thank you so much for your contribution. And what a great event. I mean, it's been absolutely incredible, hasn't it?
Brilliant, brilliant.
Such a broad diversity of people, or of organizations, all just starting to scratch the surface on smart cities. So I think we are basically assembling the Avengers for cyber. Brilliant.
And we need to assemble more. So before we go, a quick announcement for CyNam, because we're actually recruiting. We're looking for a cyber skills and growth lead. This is a new role that we're going to be delivering in partnership with G1st LEP. Really about inspiring the next generation of cyber professionals, how we engage with industry and school. We're really looking for someone with experience in the sector, and the role's actually starting in early September. So a super exciting opportunity, and it wouldn't be possible without the generous support of our cyber skills growth sponsor, Capita, as well as the Careers Enterprise Company. And that's pretty much it for this evening. So I'd just like to thank you all for joining us once again, and keep your eyes peeled for exciting updates on our social channels. Send us your feedback. It's great to hear what you think about the event, but really, really excited to see you in October for 21.3. Thank you and good night.